Can a red wine be paired with fish? Are screw tops really inferior? We are raising a glass to wine expert Lauren Power this morning as she helps debunk some very long-standing myths. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so let's start off with a red wine and fish.
Let's do it. So people often say that red wine cannot be paired with fish, but that is totally not the case. I always recommend when we're doing food and wine pairing to match the intensity of your wine to the intensity of your meal. So when it comes to eating fish, if you want to have a red wine, go for a lighter bodied wine like a Merlot or a Pinot Noir.
Okay, does the same work on the flip side then for white wine with, say, steak? Because I love steak, but I am not a red wine drinker.
Yes, it definitely works. So with steak, obviously a heavier style dish, go for a heavier style red wine. So maybe a Chardonnay from California that has some oak aging, and that is a little bit of a heavier and fuller white wine. Okay, because you don't want the food to compete with the wine. Exactly. You got it. And that's why I like that intensity tip. So pairing the intensity of the wine with the food or with the meal, that way you're kind of staying on par and you're not having one compete with the other.
Okay. What about screw tops? I remember when they first came out, people were like poo-pooing them because it's like, oh no, to be a good wine, it has to have a cork in it.
Yes. So it has to be said. So this myth that screw tops are cheaper or inferior wines because they have screw top versus cork is not the case. So historically, nicer wines have had cork, as their closure. However, if we're looking at regions like New Zealand and Australia, they have transitioned almost 100% into making all of their wines, regardless of the price point, with screw top because they are more eco-friendly and it is better for the wine because we don't have the problem of having those issues with the cork. So again, we're looking at places like New Zealand and Australia that have almost 100% transitioned into that. When we're looking at those classic wine worlds, those older regions like Italy and France, they haven't quite made the switch over that we see New Zealand and Australia make. But I do start to expect that starting to happen within the next decade or so. I think we're going to see a lot more screw tops coming out of these older world regions.
Mm-hmm. Because you think at the wineries, like how much infrastructure they would have to change to do that.
Yes. So there are a lot of these newer technologies when it comes to bottling do have the ability to do both. So that's definitely a big issue with changing that style of closure is the production of it all. So I do suspect to see some things changing in the next, I'll say, decade or so.
Right. And what about us here in Canada? Because I can't remember the last time I opened a bottle of Niagara wine and found a cork.
Yeah, so I think that, again, we have this notion that, corks are better than the screw tops or that they are in nicer bottles of wine. So I think that Niagara still kind of feels that I'll say pressure, and they've kept those corks. We also haven't really had a problem getting corks here in Ontario. There is a big issue with shortage of even cork and bottle and so many different hard goods around the world, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. So definitely see some Niagara wineries following suit.
Okay. What about sulfates in wine? We hear a lot about people with migraines especially. Oh, it's because of the sulfates in the wine.
Yes, this is one of my favorite questions. So the myth that sulfates are what cause hangovers, again, it's not the case. The sulfates are not the actual cause of hangovers. Some people do have sensitivity to sulfates, but it really is such a small percentage of us that the actual, issue with hangovers or what the major cause is that dehydration, because alcohol dehydrates us so fast. So we want to make sure that we're, including that glass of wine in between drinks, and
you mean glass of water?
Hydrated. Sorry, yes, glass of water. That probably wouldn't help.
That would add to your hangover, I would think.
You are right. Definitely having that glass of water, thank you, in between, will help the hangover.
Because sulfates are just a naturally occurring thing in some grapes.
Exactly. And, it does help the wine last. And in Ontario, because we do have a lot of imported wines, there is sulfates in all of our wines. So definitely the levels of sulfates do depend on the wine. If we're looking for a lower sulfate wine, we want to look at those that are organic certified. But again, most people don't have that sulfate issue or that sulfate sensitivity. So I would definitely try mixing in some waters before you try and find some lower sulfate wines.
Okay. Lauren, thank you very much. We'll get all the links up to your socials where people can get lots more information up at chch.com.
Thanks for having me.